So Wisconsin's population of African Americans is about 6%, but 52% of those incarcerated in the state of Wisconsin are African American. We are #1 for incarcerating African Americans per capita in the entire country.
And it's weird because if you look at Alabama or Georgia or Mississippi, or places like that, they are way below the national average.
The disproportionate rates of incarceration in sentencing do require a local discussion. It is important to decide whether the city of Appleton is contributing to that problem or if we can be a solution.
Even though Appleton, approximately 2% of its population is African Americans, our jail population consists of about 17% of the population is African Americans. That would indicate that there may be some disparity.
This is nothing new. I mean, we had studies in 1990, we had commissions in 2000. I was on a racial disparity task force in 2007. It's nothing new. First of all, it begins with policing, representation.
In our state system, a lot of it falls on each of the players. So you have state statutes, which they are passed and they're the law in Wisconsin, and then the police officers enforce it by arresting people. The district attorneys then charge people with crimes and then make what we call sentencing decisions. So will they amend them down to felonies to misdemeanors or misdemeanors down to ordinances, and then you have the sentencing judge.
In the city of Appleton, overall crime is down. However, over the past few years, we've noticed a steady rise in violent crime. Recent trends that we've noticed is that there are gangs that stem from minority groups coming up from Chicago that are selling crack cocaine.
I think we need to own what's going on in our communities, and so if there are offenses happening in our communities, we need to figure out what's really going on there. The story of they're coming in from, fill in the blank has been going on for all too long, and it's time for us to really look at what is going on here in the Fox Valley as well as statewide. In part, it's revocation. So when you're on probation, when you're on extended supervision, minor, issues with your probation agent will actually have you back in prison instead of figuring out what's going on and perhaps having some community-based supervision or, more community-based approach to this. So a lot of people that are ending up back in prison, a lot of African American males, it's because of revocation. It's not necessarily because of a new crime. So one of the largest violations that African American and other minority offenders are being brought into prison or jail for is drug offenses. A lot of them are minor drug offenses, but it appears that minority population is actually incarcerated, or they're found guilty at a much higher rate than the white population in our community and statewide.
We're fueling the system, and the fact is, we're not committing more crimes than everyone else. We can say what we want, but the fact is they're using just as many drugs on campus as they are in the lower income communities. It's how they're policed.
Wisconsin Act 28, which was proposed in the year 2009, mandated that law enforcement officers were to gather and collect and analyze information in their traffic stops in regards to racial and ethnic minorities to discover if there was any type of bias-based policing. It is my personal opinion, and not that of the Appleton Police Department, that Act 28, which was repealed by Act 29 in 2011, was not very beneficial to my work as a law enforcement officer. The mere act of completing the paperwork and documentation necessary to support Act 28 added lengthy time to my traffic stops in which citizens complained.
I don't want to give, the impression that all communities everywhere are just out there to pull over minorities, but we go to the police officers or the police chiefs of those communities, it's often just like we were told it's not happening. So a bill that would allow us to actually have some kind of documentation of the types of people being pulled over, their race, It's not going to cure everything, but it'll give us a picture as to what's happening in a community, and we'll be able to know what communities are policing well and what communities perhaps need some change. Without that, it's really difficult to say this is what's going on.
Profiling is just one part of the problem is the discrimination that's going on in cities throughout the state and in the nation. We have a very definitive policy on racial profiling, and lays out very specifically what the department's expectations are in relation to that we shall not engage in that type of activity. We try to create this environment of problem solving so that officers have the creativity and feel empowered to take care of issues.
The diversity training for the City of Appleton Police Department officers varies in content and scope from time to time. At least once a year during what is called general employee training, we do cover segments about ethnic diversity and racial sensitivity and issues of that nature.
Diversity training is an everyday experience at the Appleton Police Department. It's about modeling behavior. What we teach officers, they receive this message in recruit school and then our field training process, and then throughout their tenure here, is that focus on the behavior. Not about a color, it's not about a gender, it's not about a belief. Focus on the behavior that's in front of you or that's being reported, and be neutral on the other variables that exist regarding that. So, you know, the real measure in life is not what we do in front of people, but how we act when nobody's watching. And from our standpoint, with the privilege that law enforcement has and the responsibility that we have, it's essential that employees, sworn and civilian, have that set of skills so that they can deal with the issues at hand. I think you really need to drill down even a little bit deeper. I think sometimes we look at that sentencing and really the reality of it is that's not the problem. That's a symptom of another problem. And unless we begin to treat the underlying issues of many of the crimes that exist, incarcerating people will not fix the problem.
My definition of an alternative court is you try to address a specific problem or a specific issue.
We have a drug treatment court, we have a mental health court, there's a Safe Streets Treatment Options program. The problem is that the funding levels for these programs are so low, the counties have to actually pay for them, where they could sentence people to prison, which is something that the state would pay for. Our community here is starting to shift that, but the burden of paying for those programs is on the county. What we're really trying to change is how the whole structure is set up, including the funding, so that funding goes to the counties to be able to implement some of these community programs and alternatives.
Opportunities that exist for us is greater collaboration, and that collaboration comes in different ways and different times. It's not about a meeting, it's about ongoing conversations and helping both sides come together and deal with issues on a community level.
We have to look at who they're reaching out to, if it's effective, and we need cultural relevance in what we do in this state as far as programs, as far as our outreach, who's reaching out.
I always think it's important for us to be aware of that, constantly remind ourselves of that, and then try to do things that don't create bias or unfairness. You set that tone with good leadership, I think good things can come.
The challenge is for legislators and other elected officials to actually have the courage to step forward and make an investment into these community programs, these alternatives to incarceration, because we've had this whole concept of being tough on crime rather than being effective on crime and really changing the person and changing our communities.
Unless we decide as a community to engage in the prevention and education opportunities and create these opportunities within a community, we will become part of that statistic. We will become and contributing to that disproportionate rate.
This is my personal opinion that the City of Appleton embraces diversity in a moderate fashion. I don't see that the city is in any great hurry to change everything overnight, and to be truthful, you can't change everything overnight.
What breaks my heart more than anything when it comes to diversity is we still get phone calls from citizens who say, there's somebody suspicious walking down my street, just walking by, now they're by the neighbors. Okay, what are they doing? Well, they're not doing anything. Well, can you describe this person? Well, he's a black male. Okay, what is this person doing that's a crime or criminal activity? Well, nothing, but he's in our neighborhood and something must be wrong. So for me, what that tells me as a law enforcement executive is that we got a long way to go to working with our community to educate our citizens to say, it's not about the color. That phone call tells us a lot about the beliefs and some of the discrimination that may exist because a person of color is walking in a particular neighborhood.